Or as St. Paul put it, to will is present with me, but how to do that which is good I find not. For the good that I would, that I do not, but the evil that I would not, that I do. And no truer words were ever said. Because nobody ever transforms himself into an enlightened pattern of life by dividing himself in two pieces, good I and bad me, wherein good I preaches to bad me and tries to make me over, as if a human being were divided, were like a rider on a horse, and the rider is the soul and the horse is the body, or the rider is reason and the horse is passion, the rider is control and the horse is the uncontrolled. In other words, we've got the opposition of the ego allied with the superego, trying to ride the ego aligned with the id. And Freud's metaphors and Freud's construction of the sort of psychic anatomy of mankind is really derived from Plato, with the image of the soul riding the animal horse. Now, all this is a total failure, because there is a secret connection, as it were a sort of back stairs, between good I and bad me. Good I can look down at bad me and say, you oughtn't to be like that. But all the time, bad me is sending its energy up the back stairs to good I and motivating good I to go at bad me, but for the reasons of bad me. I ought to be better, because then I could be more proud of myself. So, in this way, there is something about spirituality, self-conscious spirituality. All kinds of religion involving preaching and moralizing and talking to oneself in a split and divided way, good I against bad me, found itself. And I think this was what Suzuki was getting at by his suddenly ceasing to talk about anything spiritual and talking only about his house and his garden. Because that has been one of the main streams of Buddhist way of life as it has come to this country, Japan, from China, to be what one might call the religion of non-religion. To find, to demonstrate, to convey what is the most highly spiritual through what is the most everyday, and to make no division between the two. So that you might say the more everyday it is, the more truly spiritual it is. The more it appears to be spiritual, that is to say, something different from, aside from, apart from everyday life, the more false that kind of spirituality will be. And this reaches a peak in the history of Japanese culture in the 17th century, when in this country there were I'll say four superbly important men. Basho, the haiku poet. Bankei, a Zen teacher. Hakuin, another Zen teacher. And Sengai, a Zen painter. And I want to say something about the work of these four men and their genius and the movement in Japanese history which they represented, which you might call the democratization of the esoteric. And there's something about this of extraordinary interest to Americans. Because for good, for better or for worse, we as Americans live in a culture in which there is nothing esoteric. There are no secrets, except those things which cannot be understood. In a way, they are always esoteric.
3,
Only a few people
2,
can understand them.
1.
And they don't need to be guarded, because even if you, for example, you publish a textbook on nuclear physics, and only very few people can understand it. But in the sense that it is published, it is no longer esoteric. In our world, for example, a teacher tries his utmost to make himself understood. He knocks himself out to make his message assimilable without tears. But as I've explained to you, in Oriental cultures, teachers expect the student to make the effort to attain the understanding. So the teacher is difficult, and you must put yourself out to understand what he says. He's not going to make it easy for you, because of the feeling that what comes to you too easily doesn't really come to you. Now, however, there was in 17th century Japan a movement among the people you might call esoteric to make their understanding available to the masses. In a sense, arising out of Buddhist compassion, the idea that the aim in life of a bodhisattva is to bring enlightenment to as many other sentient beings as possible. And always the problem is, you see, when you popularize something, how to do it without making it vulgar, cheap, watered down. These four men were in their own quite different ways geniuses at doing it. Let's start with Basho. Basho didn't invent haiku poetry, but he brought it to a certain degree of development, whereby it was possible for ordinary people who were not very